I've gotten quite a few comments and questions lately on my channel about the 2017 Giant bike lineup. Those of you who are familiar with my channel know that I've ridden quite a few Giants over the years, have a lot of experience with them. And so I'm going to do something somewhat new on my channel, never done this before, and that is we're just going to go through the lineup on the computer and I'll give my comments and feedback on them. Now I'll be focusing on cyclocross and mountain and more of the higher end ones. I'm not going to hit every bike on their lineup, but let's look at some of the main ones because Giant has come up with some interesting things for 2017. It's worth taking a look. So here we go. All right, let's look at the most interesting change that Giant has done for 2017, and they've changed the Anthem 27.5. What they've done is they've actually increased the travel. So they put a 120 millimeter fork on the front. They've increased the back from 100 to 110. And they put on a dropper seat post. So let's jump over to the Anthem Advanced 1. And they've also put on a 34 millimeter stanchion fork. So it's got a Fox 34. And like I said, it's the longer fork. So it's 120. So what they've done is last year they had the 100 millimeter Anthem and then they had the Anthem SX, which they still have the SX for 2017. But the SX really, it has the same travel now as the regular Anthem. It just has bigger tires, a little bit burlier components. But what's interesting is, I think this has taken it away from a full-on cross-country race bike. Now they say they've made the Anthem for more, modern race courses, which are rougher, which, I'm not sure, because if you saw my other videos on when I put a 120 millimeter stanchion or 120 millimeter travel fork on my Anthem, I liked it, but it took away some of the agility, and I went back to 100 on my Anthem. So I think what this has done is it's made it a really fast trail bike. I mean, don't get me wrong. If you don't need a full-on Trance for real burly trail type riding, this is a great option. It's a very versatile bike, very good all around, but it has taken it out of that full cross-country race bike. Now, I heard a rumor, I read it somewhere, so if this is true, you can say you heard it here on my channel first if you haven't heard this. If it's not true, then just forget I said it. But I heard that Giant is actually producing a 29er, a new full suspension 29er race bike, which I think is very important for Giant to do in their lineup, because they still have the Anthem X Advanced 29er and the Anthem X 29er. So Advanced is just carbon, the regular is aluminum. But this is a bike that's got really long chain stays, and I think that they're too long for a lot of racers. A lot of people, like in the UK, they really liked this bike. The trail's a little bit more wide open. But if you look at the geometry here, 18.2 inch chain stays. For me, I had one of these and it just was not agile enough. I just could not get it around the corners fast enough, which is why I switched to 27.5. But it's interesting. Giant has done away with their Anthems. If they are coming out with a new full suspension 29er, that would make sense, because a lot of racers are going 29er. In fact, Nino Schurter, I guess that's how you say it, I read recently that he's switched more to 29. He used to be the poster child for 27.5 race bikes. He's kind of gone 29. So a lot of racers are going 29. Now, let me mention this, that the good thing about this is, being the fact that it's a 27.5, you can get away with longer travel. So, you're not high off the ground like you are on a 29er. So it's nice that you can have more travel and still have a bike that's fairly low to the ground. So this could be a good cross-country bike for a lot of riders out there. I just think it loses the agility and adds a little bit of weight with this 34 millimeter stanchion fork. So again, it's a very interesting move that Giant's made. If they don't come out with a new full suspension 29er race bike, I don't think it's a great move. I think they should have kept the regular Anthem at 100 and had the Anthem SX, but we'll see. So that's the Anthem. Now I do want to mention the value that you get. This bike right here, the Anthem Advanced 1, is the best value of the Anthem line. So a little under $5,000, you get a full, or it's a carbon front triangle, so carbon frame. It's got aluminum rear triangle. which is not a big deal to me. But you get a Fox fork, you get a Fox shock, you get XT components, you get composite wheels that are tubeless ready, tubeless compatible. I've used the trail version of these on my Trance and they work great as tubeless. I mean, really lock in the tire. And you get Swalby Racing Ralphs and they're tubeless ready. So this TL Easy, that means they're tubeless ready. So this is a great value. If you look at other bike companies, you're going to be paying probably about $1,000 more for a carbon frame with equal components. You got to count the carbon rims too. So that is the Anthem full suspension bike for 2017. And I do want to mention something here that I think Giant is missing that they had for last year. Now, if you look at the carbon version of the Anthem, they have the frame set available. But if you look at the aluminum, it's missing this year. And I don't think that's a good move. I have the 2016 aluminum Anthem that I built as a frame only. It came with a Fox DPS shock. Great value, $1,600. So, I think Giant should include that. I've always praised them for including the frame sets. You can go aluminum or carbon. I think it just takes away a good option. What's really nice too, though, I didn't mention this, but both the aluminum and the carbon get a Boost 148 rear. So right here, that's the width of the rear axle. I think that's what allowed them to shorten the chain stays and increase the travel. The Boost 148, I didn't like it when it first came out because I just didn't want another standard something on a mountain bike, but it really has allowed frame makers to shorten the chain stays, add travel. So it actually has been a pretty positive impact on the bike industry. So the reach on the Anthem is now 43.5. Last year, I've got this pulled out. This is last year's Anthem. You see the reach is 42.1, 43.3 wheelbase, and the chainstays are 17.0. So if you look at the new one, it's a 16.9 inch chainstay. The reach is 43.5, so a little bit longer. And the wheelbase is the same. I'm looking at the medium here. So in the medium, it's got the same wheelbase as last year. So the shorter chainstay is going to make it more agile. The longer reach, it gives it a longer front center. That's the measurement from the bottom bracket to the front axle. That longer front center is going to make the bike more stable. So it's more agile, but yet being more stable. So that's a way the bike industry is going, and I'm glad Giant has kind of jumped on board there because I really think it's going to make a great handling bike even better if that's possible. So, again, that's the Anthem for 2017. So while we're on the subject of cross country, let's look at the XTC because Giant has done some really cool stuff with the XTC. So you've got the XTC Advanced 29er, again, Advanced means carbon, and you've got the XTC Advanced. So this is the 27.5 version, this is 29. What's cool about the 29er version is that it's got horizontal dropout. So this could be a single speed, which is really cool. I'm glad Giant did this. If you're into cross-country racing and you don't mind riding a hardtail, you don't need a full suspension, this would be your bike. I've said before in my videos, if I ever went with a hardtail, again, I would go with a 29er over 27.5 just because you want that ability to roll over things a little bit smoother because a hardtail obviously is not going to be near as plush and compliant as a full suspension. So this is a great model. This is a great model that Giant does in their lineup, the XTC. And this is a great value. I mean, $3,900, you get a full carbon frame, which Giant makes some of the best carbon in the business. And you get Fox fork. And this is 100 millimeters of travel, so this is a race bike. I mean, this could be a decent trail bike, but this is a fast race bike. I'm, looking at this thing, I'm going to say this is probably a 21, 22 pound bike. Because like the Anthem Advanced 1, you also get carbon rims and get the XT components. So really good bike for a hardtail. And you get 1146. Giant is putting this Shimano 1146 on all of their bikes in this price range. The 1 model, which they kind of carry across some of the other ones. What's also really cool that Giant has done for 2017 is they've got the Advanced Plus. So this is a 27.5 Plus bike. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Plus bikes, that's the tires. These are a really wide tire, a 3.0 tire. So really picking up steam in the bike industry. I'm glad Giant has kind of jumped on board with this. So this is a 3.0 width tire as opposed to a 2.1 or 2.2 or 4 that you see in a standard bike. So again, this is a bike that has horizontal dropouts. So right here, you can slide the rear wheel backwards and forwards and make it a single speed. So that's how you would take up your chain tension. And this is really cool that they've done this. There's only one model, but they've included a single speed 27.5 Plus bike. This would be a really sweet bike. Decent price. I mean, this is a good all-around bike. And 27.5 Plus, I'm not really going to go into it. I don't have really much experience on them, so I don't want to comment too much on them. But if you like 27.5 Plus, Giant's got them. They don't have a full suspension yet, but they do have a hardtail. And so that's the XTC. Again, you can get this in aluminum. Aluminum would be maybe not. Okay, so no XTC aluminum. They're all carbon, which is fine. I mean, hardtail. You want a 29er, in my opinion, and you want carbon. So a good bike that they put in their lineup. They also have the SX, which is got a little bit burlier tires and a longer travel fork. So it's got a 120 fork. If you're not into all-in-out speed and you want a little bit more comfort in your hardtail, the SX would be the way to go. It's got a 120 millimeter travel fork. They only have one model, so you're kind of limited there. But anyway, so that's the XTC. This is new for 2017. They have the Fathom. I'm not going to really go much into that, but this is just kind of a lower budget bike. So if you're getting into cycling, this is got a lot of good value to it. SLX components are just solid. You got a dropper seat post on this guy. You can get this in a 27.5 or 29. I would go with 29 just for the reason that I stated before. But again, really, really good value if you're getting into riding and you don't want to drop a ton of money on a new mountain bike. So now let's go to the Trance. This has been one of my favorite bikes that Giant offers. I've owned quite a few of these, and Giant has kind of done the same thing that they did with the Anthem in that they've changed the geometry a little bit. So let's look at the One. I like the One. This is such a great value. So if you look at the geometry here, this chain stays a little bit shorter. I think last year they were 17.2, now they're 17.1. They've increased the reach a little bit. I think the wheelbase has stayed the same. So again, all the same reasons that I mentioned before in the Anthem, they're doing the same thing. They've also got a longer fork this year. So last year was 140. This year they're putting a 150, which is a good move. I wouldn't go much more than 150 on the Trance because you got the rain. But again, great value on this bike. Under $5,000, you get a carbon frame, at least the front triangle. You get carbon wheels. Really nice Fox suspension on this. 34 fork. You get a dropper seat post. Shimano XT. So this again is a great value. But they also have the aluminum one. So let's go back out here to and let me just mention the two. This is still a decent value. It's got rock shocks. I'm a fan of Fox, but rock shocks they work well too. A little bit lower in components, but still carbon frame. Now I do want to mention something here, and I probably need to go to the aluminum Trance to do that. Now this one is nice too because you still get composite wheels. So for $4,000, you get carbon wheels and a carbon frame and pretty decent suspension. But let's look at the aluminum because there's something I want to mention here that is kind of a beef that I have. So let's look at the Trance 2. If you look at the specs, you'll see here that even though they use 148 boost, which is cool, they've done the same thing with geometry, but you don't get a tubeless ready wheel. Using a rim strip or the rubber rim strip or tape or whatever on a non-tubeless ready rim is kind of hit and miss. I think bike companies in this price range, over $2,000, they need to have tubeless wheels. There's so many great advantages. I think most mountain bikers are eventually going to go tubeless. Not tubeless ready tires here either. So I even though this is a good value for $2,700, I feel like Giant should have tubeless wheels. That's all I'll say for that. So that is the Trance for 2017. Again, they're going in a really good direction with the Trance, with the changes in the geometry and the travel. All right, now let's look at the Stance. The Stance is a really good value that I recommend to a lot of people getting into mountain biking. But what's interesting here, let me go back here, because they only offer this in a 27.5. They used to have this in a 29. But you know, it's got 130 millimeters of travel, which to me that's kind of getting up to where you probably want to go 27.5 unless you're really tall. But if you look at the specs here, the frame's 120, but the fork is 130. This is a good middle of the road travel bike, so it's not as, you know, it's not cross country. You're not committing fully on the cross country, but you're not committing to full on trail bike. So, but again, it's a great value. And $2,100, and you get Fox suspension, and you get two models to choose from. If you can swing it, this is the one I would go with. It's probably going to be a heavy bike. I'm just guessing. I haven't weighed one of these, but I'm guessing it's going to be at least 30 pounds, probably a tad more. But it's got really good components for the price. Again, you know, it's a good travel, good amount of travel, meaning the suspension travel here, and it's got a dropper seat post. So this bike is ready to go. What's cool about this thing too is they put a 2.4 tire on the front, an Ardent tire. This is a great tire. I've used this before. A lot of traction on this tire. It's not the lightest tire in the world, but it's pretty burly. And so a 2.4 and a 2.25 in the back, which is a great combination. You always want to go bigger on the front for the tire because you get more traction, more stability on a downhill. So if you're looking for a full suspension mountain bike and you don't want to drop a ton of money, you know, this for $1,365 is great. It's got a two ring in the front, which is a little outdated. This one goes with the 1x. So again, if you can swing the Stance 1, it's the bike I would go with. But you know, if you only have $1,365, this is also a great value. So that's the Stance. All right, looking at the Rain. The Rain is something that I'm not going to go too much into, but if you need a bike that's designed to go downhill and still you can pedal it to the top, this is your bike. You know, this for $5,350. This is a great value. You've got carbon wheels, really good Fox suspension, 36 millimeter stanchion fork, and that's the diameter of the stanchion tubes. Really great Fox shock. This is a carbon bike, so if you're doing serious enduro racing, this would be a great choice. Again, it's one that's just made to go downhill, whereas the Trance is designed to kind of be all around, pedal up, pedal, you know, fly down. This one, you know, this is just a great descending bike. This could also be a good park bike. So, you know, taking a shuttle or taking a ski lift up and riding down, you know, this would be a great option. It's going to be more agile than the Glory, which is the full-on downhill bike. I've ridden a Glory before. I did a shuttle day out in Colorado, had a great time on it. But I'm not a downhiller specifically, so I'm not really going to go into these. That's about it for those. The last thing that I'll mention, and by the way, the Revel is, you know, this is I think a 27.5. This is a 29er. If you know you're just strapped for cash and you want a mountain bike that's real, it's not a Walmart bike, but it's one you can ride off road. Great option here. And so that's the Rebel. But I do want to mention Giant is now putting e-bikes. E-bikes are kind of controversial in the mountain bike world right now. For purposes of the length of this video, I'm not going to go into that at all. I'm not going to even give you my opinion on it. But if you want an e-bike for $7,700, you can have a motor on your bike and have it motor you up the hill and go downhill. And it does have really good, you know, components on it. I mean, it should for $7,700. And even I think the one that's $5,300 has a Fox. So if you want a motor on your bike to get you up, Giant's got them. So that's all I'll cover for the mountain bikes. Now let's go over to the cyclocross and gravel bike, and that's in the X-Road category of Giant. Looking at the TCX Advanced Pro 1 and the Advanced Pro 2, they haven't made very much change on this. This is the bike that I have right now for my cyclocross racing. Great bike. I love the bike. And again, this bike they have not changed very much. It still has Shimano Ultegra Di2. $4,400, I'm telling you, that's a value for Shimano Ultegra Di2 with a carbon frame that is just amazing. They have changed the crank on this year. Last year had a rotor crank. This year has an FSA crank. And they've also changed the tires. Last year had the Max's Mud Wrestlers. This has the Schwalbe X1s. I've heard a lot of good things about these X1s. I'm probably going to try them on my cyclocross race season coming up. But again, not much change on that. And again, if you don't want to drop $4,400 on a carbon cyclocross race bike, but you still want carbon, and this is a good value. It's got SRAM. I'm not going SRAM because I've shifted Shimano for so long. I just don't want to relearn it. But this is a great frame set. Does not have, this is, again, like I mentioned with the tubeless wheels, they do not have tubeless compatible wheels on here. I just think that's a mistake that bike companies need to correct, because tubeless works awesome for cyclocross. It's not going as fast into cyclocross as it has in mountain, but even still, I think it's just a pain. I know a buddy who got one of these, and it took him a long time to get his tires to seal and try different tape and thicknesses and all that. So Giant would just save us a lot of hassle if they just would put tubeless wheels with their bikes. Now, before I go into that, you still have the aluminum. You only get one option here. It's a decent bike. It's got mechanical brakes. I'm not a fan of mechanical, but it's a good frame set. Same geometry as the carbon. Decent components. This has Shimano 105. Is it 105? So that's a good that's a good value. Just trust me. If you're new to cycling and you don't know much about components, 105 is solid. All right, this bike is a very interesting addition that Giant has put in 2017. Let me talk about this. So it's the same frame as the Advanced, TCX Advanced, but they're calling this the SX. So like they did last year with mountain bikes, and this year the SX is made for a little bit burlier terrain. This Giant is calling kind of their gravel bike. Now, they only have one option. You have to go with SRAM. But what they've done is they've put bigger tires on it. So they've got the Maxxis Ramblers, which I used this tire on my TCX Advanced in the cyclocross off season for gravel riding, and it's a great tire. And it kind of speaks to the versatility of the TCX frame, the fact that you can put a 40C tire in here and still have clearance, and I still have a lot of clearance in mine. They've also increased the gear range in the back, and they've made bigger rotors. So those are all positive moves for gravel, and it also says somewhere that they've shortened the stem just a hair and made the bars a little bit wider to be more comfortable. But what's interesting is it's the exact same frame as they use on their cyclocross race bike. If they were going to go full into gravel, jumping 2 feet into the gravel race scene, I think they should have changed the geometry a little bit. They should have lowered the bottom bracket just a hair and slackened the head angle a little bit. But I still ride my TCX on gravel a lot, especially if I'm doing fast group rides or racing on gravel. I'll use my TCX, and it's great. So this is going to be a good gravel bike. If you're looking to get into gravel, and for $2,000 you get a carbon frame with decent components, and you don't mind SRAM, you don't mind learning how to shift a SRAM, use those shifters, it's a good bike. So I kind of feel like Giant is testing the water, so to speak, and seeing how this bike sells, and maybe next year they'll come out with a full-on gravel bike. So my full-on gravel bike is a 9er RLT9 Steel, which is an awesome bike. It's got more of the gravel focused geometry. And I do notice a difference. You can go back and watch my videos on gravel versus cyclocross. But, you know, this is a good move for Giant. You know, gravel riding is the most popular form of riding today, that as far as how it's exploding. It is just really taken off in the United States. So, you know, Giant could not miss that boat. And I think this is their first stab at it. Now, you do have the Revolt, which is their more kind of endurance gravel bike. I feel like they should have increased the spec on this bike. So this, for $1,300, it's decent, and it's aluminum frame. And this has got more relaxed geometry than the TCX SX. So this is more of the endurance gravel bike, but this is just too heavy to be a race bike. It's got to be a full-on race bike. Probably needs to be carbon, but also needs to have lighter components. So, you know, that's interesting, and Giant is kind of confusing in this kind of realm right here with the Revolt, the AnyRoad, and the Comax. So the Comax is the carbon version of the AnyRoad, and this is their aluminum version. The Revolt, let's go back to the Revolt. The Revolt actually has some pretty big tires on it. If you look at the specs and you come down here to the tires, 38C tires, whereas the Comax, the AnyRoad Comax and the AnyRoad have 32C tires. So this is made to cover a little bit rougher terrain, probably more of a pure gravel bike. This one's probably more of all terrain, you know, road, bike paths, and dirt roads, maybe light trail, but 32C tires are going to limit its ability on trails. Although I do ride my cross bike on trails, but you just got to be careful. So it's a little confusing to have these two, but if you're looking at one of these, the Revolt is more of your gravel focus bike, where this is a little bit more versatile, a little bit better for the road if your terrain covers more road. And then, of course, they have the Tough Road, which got racks and everything. This is a pretty decent commuter bike, and it's got a flat bar, and they even have a different model without the racks and stuff. So, you know, that's the cyclocross and gravel type bikes that Giant offers, and that's going to pretty much wrap up my review of the Giant 27 bikes. Like I said, I'm really not going to go into the road stuff. I've ridden Giant road bikes in the past. I've had quite a few. They make really good road bikes, really good carbon. But you know, for this purpose of this video, I just wanted to focus on the mountain and the cyclocross and gravel. So there you go, some of the bikes that Giant is coming out with in 2017. Like I said, I can't cover all of them, but I wanted to cover the ones that are more centered on the type of bikes that I do on my channel, which is gravel, cyclocross, and mountain. If this video is helpful for you, give it a thumbs up. It helps me out because this is a new style of video that I've done on my channel. So that way I'll know that this kind of content is helpful for some of you out there. Thanks for watching.